Morning everybody, Jessie here, and no, I'm not in the middle of the screen at the moment because I really wanted to just give you an opportunity to see this beautiful scenery before I jump into it. And we've got this lake area, flow of water, river area right here. I'm out in the Bethel area today, and as you can see, we actually have a flowing motion. And I'm going to jump around here into the camera area, and I'm operating very carefully because there's some good snow right in here right now, but this is actually a great promise of spring. We actually have a lot of lakes and ponds around here in Maine that are still frozen over, still covered in ice, but here in the Bethel region we actually have some flowing water, so that encourages me that regardless of the single and teen digits at night that we still have spring coming. It's on its way, and that's pretty exciting. But I wanted to do a little video this month on something that I have seen so many people dealing with, so many people feeling challenged by right now, and that is the energy of triggers. Raise your hand, how many of you have been going through it? And I bet everybody out there has gone, oh yeah, particularly like in the last month or so, I've been really triggered by something. There seems to be a lot of anger coming up around people out there and things like that, and a lot of very opinionated things. So I thought I would address this from the code perspective and hopefully give you a little more ideas. So if you see me playing with something, that's my magnets here. I'm brought them out to kind of give an example in this of how it works. And I thought magnets might be a great opportunity to do that, as well as just enjoying some great scenery, because it's been a while before I could get out and be outside again and shoot a video out here. So I'm really excited to be doing this. I chose to come out to the Bethel area this weekend because it's an amazing area. For one, it is where my codes align very strongly. It's where I'm very aligned with Orly, for those that have followed my story with Orly and what that's about. Certainly in the code journey, that is something that I talked about, our story and our journey together, because it's a big part of how all the code energy unfolded for me. But let's kind of move on to this triggers, because I feel like there's a lot of information I want to share, and I'm going to hope I can remember everything, because those that know from the accident, my memory hasn't always been the best. But with triggers, what we find is there's really three key components to triggers. There's the individual trigger. There's triggers that are like multiple different triggers or multiple triggers happening with us. And then there is getting triggered. So it's the act where we've already gone into, say, a reaction instead of action mode on this. And what we find in triggers is there are polarity energies. So like magnets, right? Magnets can attract, right? Or they can repel each other, right? Like this. Now triggers are very similar, and what happens with triggers is very similar to magnets. If you have a really strong trigger that comes at you, it's going to push you. So just like the magnet, it's going to push you away. Okay, now sometimes what happens is that trigger along the way kind of flips, maybe, and instead of pushing you away from it, boom, it draws you right in, it sucks you right into all that drama, or it sucks you right into whatever that trigger is about in there. Now, we also have a third dimension that happens, and that's when the trigger is coming at you, but then it switches. And see, it creates like this dance. So at that point, when it creates the dance like this, it's got both a pull and a push to it. So it allows you to flow. It allows you to move around the trigger, up, down, around it. Okay? And see, here again, we can still connect with it without getting heavily sucked into it, without this bam hitting us like hitting a wall, you know, like hitting that sudden wall aspect in there. So this is really great because you have these polarity energies and triggers, but you also have this dance motion. You also have that flow that's going on. So when we look at triggers from a perspective, what happens is if we have a single trigger going on And when we're talking about single or plural triggers, we haven't quite gotten sucked into the drama, but we know it's happening. And if you hear a little noise behind me, don't worry, we got some people going by. We got some people going by today on, you know, some jet skis and things like that, because they're out on the trails. I'm out on some of the ski trails right now. And so anyways, what happens with that is that in either a singular or a plural, we haven't quite hit that reaction stage. So we still have a chance to make the trigger work for us. Now, when we look at it in the singular form, the singular form is one of the polarities. And when we look at it in the already, hey, I've already reacted form, then we're looking at it in the other polarity. So the first polarity of a single trigger, what that really does for us is to motivate us into action. It kind of brings out that inner activist. It connects us with a sense of purpose or mission or things like that. So a trigger isn't always a negative or a bad thing. What it does is it's trying to connect us to get passionate about something. It's trying to get us to feel something. Now, if a trigger is in its truth, if it's operating in true energy form or pure energy form, that's exactly what it will do, is it'll sort of inspire us into motion. But if it is not acting in that true energy form and it's operating in the distorted form, what it will do is it will trigger a sort of reaction for us that brings out more of the activist. We feel like we have to protest. We feel like we have to rebel. We feel like we have to fight against something. And this has always been one of my challenges when it comes to seeing the activist out there, because on one hand, yes, it's very important that we speak up and we voice things and we stand up for things, but we have to make sure we're not doing it from a place of war. We have to make sure that we're not doing it from a place of fight. Because when we do it from a place of fight, we lose the purpose, we lose the mission in it, we lose the truth in it. Now, on the other polarity form of the scale, we have triggered, where we've already gone into the reaction, we've already gone into being in that space like, oh my gosh, what have I done? You know, this really got to me today. I'm having a hard time releasing it. That's the triggered, as in it's already gotten to us aspect. And that aspect comes up because it is showing us lies. It's showing us where we can trust or not trust in things. So when we get triggered by something, it's oftentimes an area that maybe we're not looking at in our life. It's an area that we had hoped would be true and isn't. It's an area where we are feeling betrayed in some way. It's an area where deception has shown up. And that can feel very heavy for a lot of people, because it's one of those things that says, oh my gosh, I've got another piece of responsibility to deal with. Oh my gosh, I've got this another aspect of something I've got to take care of in my life, or the heart kind of sinks in that space. And the reason the heart sinks is not so much because it didn't work out, but because it wasn't true. And because our human eyes didn't see it for what it really was, or because the aspect that was creating the trigger, whether that was person, place, thing, situation, ended up showing its true self, and that true self wasn't what it originally presented itself by. So that's where we start to get into that triggered space in there. Now, our neutral ground, our dance ground, and what's very interesting about each one of these components is that in the first one, the individual trigger, it's really about partnership. It's about connecting with other people, and that's what purpose and mission does, is it connects us with other people. That can be a positive or a negative thing, right? You know, you get some people that connect, and that creates all kinds of chaos and danger and things like that. You get other people that connect and they change the world. So there's a union that is happening in some way. It's a coming together with something. It's an aligning with something in some way. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, it starts off as a partnership, but then as it runs its full course, you get this huge burst of energy that is always bound to come to an end. It's not an eternal factor. And usually in that piece lies the code patterns of sacrifice, which means we end up either sacrificing ourselves or getting sacrificed in some way or feeling sacrificed in some way in order to keep it. And that's a sure sign that anytime that little piece of sacrifice, where we start sacrificing ourselves, say like we see this in relationships a lot of times, and oftentimes that's what this triggered aspect is about, is relationships that don't work out or that come to an end in some way. Something comes to an end in some way. And it's because in order to keep it in place, it would require a huge amount of energy. It requires us sacrificing oftentimes our own truth in the process. Now, when we find that middle ground, and everything has this polarity, so I don't say there's only the polarity theory and there's only not the polarity theory, because there's both. But what happens is to take the polarities and to integrate them in a way that they can dance. And that's where the magic lies. Because what happens then is we open a code pattern that offers us the opportunity to create change in our lives. It offers us the opportunity to work with others in a creative, free-thinking way that opens the door to shift and to change, to get us out of a either stagnant situation or a situation that isn't based in truth or that is too heavy in activism and fighting and things like that. So it brings the balance in, and then we can do the dance. Then we have the magic. Then we can connect gently without the heavy forces of coming together. And that's a magical place to be. Because once we do that and we start to open that creative expression, we open ourselves up to true partnership. We open ourselves to a partnership with ourselves and with others that can grow, that can develop, and that allows each person to be in their own free space. It allows each person to be who they are and to expand from there. So it's a really amazing thing when we have these multiple triggers going on, that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's about getting proactive. And another piece about this aspect of the creative space, about that so-called neutral or middle ground space that we have with the multiple triggers that are going on, is that it really asks us to step up and take charge of our life. Step up and take charge. Where, I'm sorry, I have interesting things going on with the skiers going by and the birds flying by right now. And to be proactive in bringing together these opposite sides of ourselves, to be proactive in our life and to take charge of our life where others are concerned and where we're working in group dynamics in particular, but also to take charge of what's true for ourselves, to take charge and be in our own truth. So that's really huge when we start to talk about it. That's a gigantic piece. And people say, well, you know, how do I tap into this? You know, how do I get to that space of things? And really, some of the easiest things is to connect with the arts. To connect with, whether you sit down and write, and that can be a journal, that can be a book, it doesn't matter. Whether that's just scribbling notes down, it can be music, whether you're listening to music, dancing to music, playing with music, whether it is drawing or art or things like that, are great ways to do it. Nature, taking a walk in nature actually stimulates our creative energy, and that's why I recommend it a lot, because for a lot of people, they have triggers or get triggered around artistic things because it brings up lies about being unworthy or not being good enough or not having talent or things like that. So sometimes a walk in nature is it. But you can even just go and enjoy other people who are doing that. You can go to a museum. It's really an endless thing. But the important piece that it does, and the reason that it's in such a neutral space, is because when we talk about the arts, when we talk about creativity, there is no right or wrong. We've stepped into compassion. We've removed the judgment. And that's an incredible piece. When we do that, it is free expression. It's not about whether you do it this way or that way or by that formula. It's about free expression. And that is a real gigantic power piece for us to consider. That is the piece that opens the gateways, as they say. Because when we start to do this and we step into that free creative expression space and we just allow ourselves to do, I mean, it can be making snow angels if you're in an area like this. It can be so many things. Anything that engages that creative energy, brainstorming something, just doodling anything. And when we start to open those doors, we remove the judgments, we remove the polarities around them, because the polarities do have those judgments in them on one level or another. And we just are accepting of who we are and who others are. And that opens us to the most expansive and whole relationships that we can experience in this life in many ways. So when we start to look at all of this, and I want to bring in another piece as this particularly applies to 2018, it is an aspect that the lies, the deceptions, the mission, the purpose is focusing in really on things that are showing us where we're being too materialistic, where we're living too much in the world. So our triggers right now in this year are really showing us where we're holding our power, so to say, where we're operating within our whole self and where we are operating in our fragmented self. It is showing us where we have let go of the material world controlling us and where it's still controlling us. It is showing us components of wisdom. So our triggers are really huge teachers right now in this year. It's really showing us where we've overcome the trials and the tribulations and where we're living in wisdom and where we're not living in wisdom. And you know, that is such a beautiful, beautiful blessing. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take a look just real quickly at my cheat notes here, because I feel like there was maybe one important point or something that I wanted to get in here, but maybe I got them all. I'm just going to make sure really quick on this. And so, yeah, when we get this, and what happens is when we open that creative space, when we take our proactive whole self and we say, you know what, I'm going to take charge. I'm getting this trigger coming through, and I'm not going to go into the polarities. I'm not going to come in polarities. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unite those things. I'm going to dance. I'm going to dance, and I'm going to unite those polarities. And what we do from that space is to generate luck for ourselves. And I may have talked about this before, but what luck really is luck is the energy that when we're living in a clear space, it unfolds so many blessings into our life. And you know, just the other day, I let go of a lot of my material worries and concessions, because I was having to leave a space that I was regrouping in about a week ago, and I said to myself, and my body is like, I'm not ready to be back in the vehicle. You might have the warmth, you might have the blankets, but I need some time. I need processing time to get through everything. And as soon as I said, okay, I'll honor that time. I'll take some time to be in some different spaces or to find something to be in over the next month and to work with that. And as soon as I did that, the material challenges went away and unknown sources of money showed up to provide me with what I needed. Because I said, hey, I can't do this from the space I'm in. I need to, have the resources to do this. I'll honor it. I'll do it. I'll take the time for it. But I got to have the resources. And lo and behold, within less than 3 hours, I had a phone call saying, we're sending you money for this. And then about 3 hours after that, no, it wasn't even 3 hours, 3 hours total, both things happened. I got another message from somebody saying, I've got a little extra money that I'd like to send you right now to just help you out. That's actually your money. It's always nice when people send you your money back, right? And it was totally unexpected. It was totally out of the blue, and such a blessing and such a gift, because it represented so much more than just that money coming through for me in there. And yes, it's going to take a couple of weeks for it all to come through where I can really use it. But in the meantime, the fact was I made the commitment to that healing and allowing that, and it showed up. So really we don't have some of the worries that are there that we think that we have sometimes. So luck is really about healing. And what does it heal? It heals our joy. It heals our abundance patterns. It heals our fears and our worries and our concerns where the material world is concerned. And yet, to really generate luck, it requires us to get totally honest and truthful with ourselves and to be living purely. And when we say purely, we mean pure of heart, pure of mind, pure of spirit, to be living through those divine principles, to be living compassionately. To sum it up, to live compassionately. So that is this month's video. I hope this has been insightful for you. Don't forget the magnets. Dance. And don't let things suck you in, and don't let them push you away. Take care, everybody. I'll see you next month.